You've just been born a full-blooded Viltrumite on the planet Viltrum. Congratulations! Several tall figures dressed in battle armor check your vital signs in the monitors as they decide your fate. Yep, he's strong, says the doctor. Or maybe he's just a regular guy with a stethoscope. Who knows? You're a baby. It's hard for you to tell. Your parents, who are also still in their uniforms, breathe a sigh of relief. You see, the Viltrumites have a strong policy about childbirth, which means that only the strong children are allowed to survive. The rest are, well, don't worry about the rest. Whoa. This means that you get to go home to your parents. But Viltrumite babies don't really get to watch Cocomelon with their stuffed animals. Instead, they place you in a gravity chamber 4 times the strength of Earth, where every muscle in your tiny body is forced to adapt to intense pressure. Your cries echo off steel walls as you try to lift your head, but no one comes to comfort you. On Viltrum, weakness will never be rewarded, even as a baby. Now that you've made it to 2 years old, you're already showing signs of the power within you. The average fully grown Viltrumite can lift at least 400 tons, but as a toddler, you're not quite there yet. Your quote-unquote toys are really just heavy-weighted blocks, and you're doing pretty well with them. You've also started showing signs of levitation already, which means your fight training begins immediately. Your parents watch your progress like hawks and carefully measure each metric to make sure you don't fall behind. They don't help you up if you stumble. Instead, they watch from a distance with their arms crossed as you struggle to get back onto your feet. A true Viltrumite stands on their own, always. Thanks, Dad. Everyone in this species are raised as warriors from birth, so Viltrumites have no comprehension of what genuine parental love is like. Now at 5 years old, you seem to be holding up well so far, so it's time for you to be thrown into the Juvenile Combat Initiative. It's full of other kids your age, but this isn't a playground. It's a battlefield for children. Basically, just a toddler fight club. On your first day, you're matched against a boy named Laro, who's a little older than you and twice your size. There's only one way to win these matches: incapacitate your opponent. Good luck out there, kid. As the match begins, Laro charges at you and knocks you off your feet. Those extra years of conditioning have given him an advantage in strength, but around these parts, there's no excuse. Get up. One of your instructors growls. You pull yourself up again and drive your tiny fist into Laro's jaw. When he stumbles backwards, you take the opportunity to knock him to the ground. The crowd of children and parents erupts into applause. At 5 years old, you've earned their respect. For now. As a planet, Viltrum...
Hey, yo, make sure y'all like and subscribe and comment down below. This is wild.
Viltrum is run by the military and has one goal: conquer everything. It's been slowly expanding its empire for thousands of years, taking over nearby planets one at a time. The Viltrumites believe that they're the most superior being in the universe, destined to rule over everyone else. So every part of this society exists to breed the perfect soldiers to feed this galactic takeover. Your first day of school on Viltrum is pretty straightforward. Every subject ties back to the Empire's ideals. History class only exists to glorify past conquests. Science focuses on weapon development, and even mathematics is taught through the perspective of warfare logistics. Your PE class is really just combat training with a side of cardio, and every failure is punished. You better be perfect, kid, or you're not going to make it much longer. School still has some memories that'll stick with you forever though. In history class, you're now old enough to learn about the events of the Purging, when Viltrumites culled the weak from their population to ensure only the strongest survived. Hundreds of thousands of years ago, before they set off to conquer the stars, Viltrum was rocked by a horrific civil war. This war began when Viltrumites that valued strength and believed in their natural superiority got together and decided to kill all the weak members of the species. Anyone who opposed them or were deemed unfit were executed in a global bloodbath called the Purging. Years later, the planet lay in ruins and half the population had died, but at least the weak had been eliminated. From that point on, Viltrumites adopted a brutal doctrine of eugenics, meaning only the strong were allowed to survive on Viltrum. Viltrum was rebuilt by its superhuman population, who then set their sights on creating a galactic empire. They established the World Conquering Committee, an organization responsible for the expansion of the empire. The pattern was always the same. A planet targeted for assimilation would be offered a chance to willingly join the empire in patronage. Those that refused were destroyed by an army of flying supermen. It's a tough lesson to swallow as a kid, but it's important to your survival that you understand. You may no longer be a baby, but it's never too late to abort you. Now at 10 years old, your training escalates. You're sent on your first observation mission to a freshly conquered planet. As you fly down, the air is thick with the scent of burning rubble, and the skies are black with smoke. Villages burn and cities lie in ruins. You follow your squad leader, a towering figure named General Korath. As he surveys the aftermath of the conquest, he sets your squad down by the captured rebels kneeling in chains, with their heads bowing in defeat. Korath points at the prisoners. Decide their fate, he says with a voice devoid of any emotion. Whoa, 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 what? Why does this have to be on you? Your heart pounds as you look at their terrified faces, but you know all too well that hesitation is dangerous and a form of weakness. With trembling hands, you point to the execution squad. Korath nods, and the prisoners are
Look, from the very beginning, football's been a conspiracy to make us hungry. Now let me tell you where it all started.
And we'll call this a pigskin. Make people crave bacon.
And everybody loves bacon.
I love bacon.
Ever ask yourself how Buffalo got a team?
These wings deserve a team.
I picked out a good team name for Buffalo, Bill. And they're still
no more. That night, for the first time and the last time in your life, you lie awake, haunted by the memory. Don't get used to it though, because we don't do guilt here. At 15, you're given your first solo mission, leading a squad to raid a rebel outpost. It's a relatively small operation, but it's a test of your leadership capabilities. And you better be able to pull this off, because you remember what happens to failures. It's on a nearby planet, and you get there the same way anyone else on Viltrum gets across the galaxy. You don't need rockets or teleporters. Viltrumites can fly through space and hold their breath for several weeks. They also move at incredible speeds.
Nuts.
So hopping in a spacecraft would just be inefficient. Your team descends on the outpost, but things go wrong almost immediately. The rebels are better armed than expected, and the simple skirmish devolves into chaos. You manage to turn things around and complete the mission by destroying their outpost, but not without a cost. Several of your squad mates are killed, with their bodies left behind as you retreat. When you return to Viltrum, the loss of life is glossed over. A victory is a victory, your instructor says, patting you on the back. What a wholesome life lesson. At 16, the accumulation of everything you've ever trained for arrives. The Viltrumite Trials. Without exaggeration, it's the biggest event of your life. These aren't ceremonial rites or symbolic tests. They're brutal challenges designed to weed anyone out who doesn't embody the Empire's ideals, and anyone who is deemed weak. Failing here doesn't just mean humiliation. It means death. This is your last chance to prove you deserve to survive. Your trials begin on a distant moon, with gravity 3 times the strength of Viltrum's. You and 30 other candidates are dropped there with nothing but the clothes on your backs. The goal is simple: survive for a week while completing a series of grueling challenges. But just surviving isn't enough. You have to dominate. The first task is a race across the moon's rocky surface. The terrain is jagged and unstable, and every step sends sharp, painful vibrations through your legs. You feel the gravity's pull with every movement, and after just a few minutes, your muscles scream for relief. But there is no relief. Falling behind isn't an option. Those who do are left for dead, their bodies claimed by the unforgiving landscape. As you cross a ridge, you see the next challenge, a combat arena carved into the ground. The instructors announce that the top 20 finishers will advance to the next round. You make it in time, but barely. You turn to face your first opponent, Laro, who's admittedly a lot bigger than he was back in the toddler fight club. He's taller, broader, and has a reputation of cruelty. You dodge his first swing and counter with a blow to the temple, dropping him immediately. The fight is over in seconds. The instructors nod approvingly, but their expressions remain cold. There's no praise here, just acknowledgement that you've done what's expected. By the third day, only 12 candidates remain. The trials shift focus to teamwork, an ironic twist, given the Viltrumites' emphasis on individual strength. You're paired with 2 others, Corvin, a quiet but fiercely skilled fighter, and Vetra, an impulsive recruit with a talent for improvisation. Your task is to infiltrate a simulated rebel stronghold and eliminate its defenders. The simulation is anything but simple. The quote-unquote defenders are seasoned Viltrumite soldiers tasked with stopping you at any cost. As you approach the stronghold, Vetra rushes ahead, ignoring your orders. She's caught in an ambush and Corvin pulls her back just in time. The 3 of you regroup and devise a new strategy. You take the lead, coordinate an assault that outmaneuvers your defenders. It's messy and chaotic, but it works. By the end of the exercise, you've secured the stronghold and eliminated the targets. Back at the trial grounds, the instructors debrief your group. They commend your leadership, but criticize Vetra's impulsiveness. A team is only as strong as its weakest link, one of them says, fixing her with a steely gaze. Vetra's jaw tightens, but she doesn't respond. The lesson is clear. Even teamwork on Viltrum is a tool, not a virtue. The last test is the most brutal of all. A free-for-all, where only the strongest will emerge victorious. The instructors release you into a sprawling battlefield, a maze of cliffs, caves, and treacherous terrain. There is one objective: Be the last one standing. The first few hours are chaos. Alliances form and dissolve in minutes as candidates betray one another for the chance to survive. You stay on the move, avoiding direct confrontations while picking off weaker opponents. By the third day, only 4 of you remain. You, Corvin, a candidate named Tarek, and a brutal fighter known simply as the Beast. Tarek and the Beast form an uneasy alliance, forcing you and Corvin to do the same. The 4 of you clash in a brutal skirmish, every blow shaking the ground beneath your feet. Tarek is the first to fall, his chest caving under Corvin's relentless assault. The Beast turns on you, his fists like hammers. You manage to outmaneuver him, landing a blow to his throat that sends him staggering. Corvin seizes the opportunity and finishes him off. Now it's just you and Corvin. For a moment, you hesitate. The 2 of you have fought side by side, saved each other's lives, and forged a bond in the heat of battle. But bond means nothing here. With a swift, decisive strike, you knock him unconscious. The instructors declare you the victor. When the trials are over, you're one of the only 3 candidates who survived. You're bloodied, exhausted, and battered, but you've proven your worth. The instructors present you with the insignia of a Viltrumite warrior, a simple emblem that carries the weight of everything you've endured. You've earned this, one of them says, their tone as cold as ever. Don't make us regret it. By your mid-20s, war has become second nature. Every day feels like a repetition of the last. Descend upon a planet, crush its defenses, pacify its population, and move on to the next. The galaxy is vast, and the Viltrumite Empire demands total dominance. You barely have time to process one battle before you're thrust into another. You also now have a mustache, and so does every other Viltrumite man. It's legally required by the government that all men have a mustache, kind of like Australia. By your 40s, the cracks in the Empire's facade become harder to ignore. The conquests continue, but the resistance grows fiercer. Rebellions that once took days to crush now drag on for months. You stopped aging years ago. The older you become, the more powerful you grow, and the slower you age. You can live for thousands of years. In your 50s, you return home from that week's conquest after receiving word that your father has died. The official report says he passed during a training exercise, but whispers suggest something darker, an act of defiance punished by the Empire. At his funeral, they didn't mention anything about his personal life, only the things he did to serve the Empire. They just relive his glory days as a military leader. The doubts that have plagued you for years resurface. Was he truly a loyal servant of the Empire? Or did he question the path laid out for him? Shortly after your father's funeral, you are summoned to a meeting with the High Command. They congratulate you on your years of service and inform you that it's time for you to take on a new role in the Empire's master plan. Reproduction. They think your genetics are exemplary and that it's your duty to carry on that strength to the next generation. Except that generation won't be born here. You were given a file with information about a distant, resource-rich planet called Corvus. You see, one of the High Command's
At first I was saying they like Superman, but this is worse than Superman lifestyle back home on his planet.
most effective war strategies is sending scouts across the universe to infiltrate the world, and most importantly, reproduce with a member of the dominant local species. Viltrumite genes are extremely adaptive. They're so potent that a Viltrumite can reproduce with almost any other race in the universe, humanoid or not, and their genes will almost completely overpower the genetics of the non-Viltrumite parent, making the resulting offspring almost purely Viltrumite themselves. One of the few rules of this reproduction program are that you're only allowed to procreate with genetically similar species. The more naturally compatible the mate's race is, the sooner the offspring will inherit all of the standard Viltrumite abilities. Humans of Earth, for example, are so genetically close to Viltrumites that a human Viltrumite hybrid is nearly identical to a pure-blooded Viltrumite and will eventually become just as powerful. But why are they doing all this? To create more Viltrumites and take over that planet. Looking at the file, the population of Corvus is humanoid. Very good. And the world has been deemed a prime candidate for genetic integration. Your mission is to establish yourself among the Corvans, produce offspring, and solidify Viltrumite influence on the planet. At first, this feels like a break from the endless battles. Go live a normal life and start a family? For a guy like you, that sounds almost too easy. But this isn't about building a family. It's about the Empire's agenda. The children you father won't belong to you. They'll belong to Viltrum. When you arrive on Corvus, you see it's quite beautiful. Not that you'd ever admit that. The Corvalans are peaceful people, and their culture is centered on art, community, and harmony with nature, which is pretty different to everything you've ever known. Your initial interactions are all very calculated and designed to gain their trust. You present yourself as a traveler seeking refuge. It's a pretty good play. When it comes to Viltrumite infiltration, it's one of the oldest tricks in the book. Over time, you integrate into their society, forming bonds and learning their ways. Despite your mission to destroy them from the inside out, you can't help but admire the core villains. Their values are so different from the Viltrumite agenda. Years from now, your people will come in to either conquer or destroy this planet. But for the first time in your life, you begin to experience peace. Eventually, you fulfill your duty and form a partnership with a core villain woman named Ilera. Viltrumites are taught from an early age to view their mates as nothing more than tools for breeding or combat purposes. Yet, you're beginning to see Ilera as much more than a pet. Together, you have 2 children, both of whom inherit your superhuman strength and resilience. Raising them is unlike anything you've ever experienced. For the first time, you understand what it means to nurture and to protect. Yet the Empire's shadow hangs over you. You know that one day the High Command will call for your return, and your children will be expected to join the Viltrumite ranks. That day finally comes, and the High Command praises your progress and orders you to return to Viltrum with your children. But can you do it? That night, as your family sleeps, you make a decision. You contact the High Command and inform them that you've encountered some unforeseen complications. It's a big, fat lie, but at least it buys you time. Over the next few weeks, you prepare. You teach your children how to harness their abilities, instilling them in the values you've learned from both Viltrum and Corvus. You know that when the Empire finds out what you've done, they will come for you. But for now, you're giving your family a fighting chance. The Viltrumites finally arrive, led by an aged and battle-scarred General Koraf. You see a few faces you know, but most faces you don't. The invading army attacks, and the battle is brutal. You're completely outnumbered fighting with everything you have, and you know you're not winning this battle. All those years of combat experience have served you well, but in the end, you were just no match for the Empire, and are killed leading the planet's last stand, but not before ensuring your family's escape. Ilera and the children disappear into the wilderness. Their future is uncertain, but at least it's free from the Viltrum army. The same can't be said about Corvus though, which is now the Empire's newest addition. Your death is recorded as a betrayal, and your name is quietly removed from the Viltrumite history. But to those who knew you, you're remembered not as a conqueror, but as a father who chose freedom over a millennia-old galactic empire. Not bad for a kid in a gravity chamber.